all of our coverage areas. Asking questions tonight will be Modesto Bee Opinions Editor Garth Stapley and Fresno Bee Merced Sunstar Executive Editor Joe Keaton. Modesto Bee Research and Information Specialist Maria Figueroa will be handling the timer. And we also have members of our Community Advisory Board here to observe. Take it away, sir.
All right, well, thank you. Mr. Duarte, Mr. Gray, would you approach the podiums? As expected, Mr. Duarte is on the right and Mr. Gray is on the left.
Well, I think that depends on where you're sitting, but.
All right, let's go. As you know, we'll ask for 90-second answers to each question. And most questions will be asked of both candidates. Pay attention because Maria will ring that dinger, and she's a dinger. There you go. All right, first question. I'm sorry. We're going to start with opening statements. You get 2 minutes each. We go in alphabetic order, so Mr. Duarte.
Excellent. Hello, thank you for coming out. This is a wonderful opportunity, a very valuable opportunity to talk directly to the voters here in this 13th Congressional District about why I'm running for Congress, who I am, what my background is, and why I believe I can go back to Washington, D.C. and represent working families here in the district. I've walked this district, I've hit 2,400 doors in this district since I started the campaign, and I know current policies and the current situation in our economy is crushing working families in this district. Families are choosing between dinner on the table and a tank of gas. Getting to work is an economic challenge. This is wrong. It's coming out of policies from Sacramento, and it's coming out of policies from Washington, D.C. On the farm, we don't have water. We're paying gas taxes. We don't have decent roads to drive on. We can't get to work. This is ridiculous. I'm a farmer and a businessman. The lower house of Congress was foreseen by our founding fathers to be a place where the common person, the person who established what he was and who he was going to become in his own district, in the valley here, then went back to Washington, D.C. and represented his district. And then when he was done serving, came home to his district to live with his lovely wife, run his business again, Duarte Nursery, and have the pride of having served the working families and all of those in his district with everything he had while he was there. This is not a place for career politicians, and guess what? I'm not a career politician. I've been 33 years at Duarte Nursery. I've already got a gold watch there. I won't be around long enough to get another one. Thank you.
Very good. Mr. Gray.
Well, good evening, and thank you to the Modesto Bee, the Sunstar, the Fresno Bee for putting this opportunity together for the candidates to talk directly to voters and tell them a little bit about ourselves and what we stand for and why this election is so important. My name's Adam Gray. I grew up in Merced County. I was born and raised and have lived in this district my whole life. I've had the honor of representing this community these past 10 years in the state legislature. During that time, I've accomplished a lot. And I've done it by working in a bipartisan fashion. That's not a popular word in 2022. Both sides of the political aisle like to blame all the problems on the other party. And you're going to hear that distinction in this campaign. On my side, a proven bipartisan leader who works with both parties to do things like build a medical school here in the Valley, pass a bipartisan water bond, the largest in California history, make sure that our police and those that protect us are fully funded and have the extra resources to make our community safe. That's the kind of leadership I've provided in the state legislature. And frankly, Congress is far too full of partisan politicians blaming the other party for all of our problems. We need people that are going to work together and always put you before their political party. That's what I want to do in Washington, D.C. And thank you again for the opportunity to be here and talk about the issues.
Very good. First question then, we'll go to Mr. Gray, and we'll try to alternate the order of your responses.
Sure.
Is your personal leadership style more likely to bring people together or to polarize them? 90 seconds.
Well, 100% bring people together. As I was saying earlier, our politics have become way too divided. In Sacramento, I was the chairperson and leader of the moderate Democratic caucus called the New Dems. That was a group that sought to bring kind of both parties together and bring public policy that makes sense for California. In the last several years, I was a founding member of the California Problem Solvers Caucus, which is a caucus of equal Democrats and Republicans who get together come up with solutions for California's problems that we can pass on a bipartisan basis. That's the kind of leadership you'll see in DC. And with me, it's not just talk, because I've got a record that voters can look at, accomplishments that we've done in a bipartisan fashion, and endorsements from the other side of the aisle. Republican Sheriff Jeff Dirksey, right here in Stanislaus County. Republican Sheriff Vern Warnke in Merced County. Margaret Mims in Fresno County. Senator Anthony Cannella and Assemblywoman Kristen Olson. All across the aisle, but we work together to make California better. And I want to go back to DC and have that same kind of leadership there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Duarte. Same question. Would you like me to repeat it?
Yeah, please.
Is your personal leadership style more likely to bring people together or to polarize them?
Well, how many 20-plus year employees of Duarte Nursery do we have here tonight? Not including my parents, my brother. The abuelas, see the abuelas ad that's on TV running, the Spanish language ad? 4 women standing up for me, excited to go out. We didn't have to pay them to go out and make that abuelas ad. A combined 110 years experience working at Duarte Nursery. I'm so proud of what we've accomplished at the nursery, and I'm so proud that the entire population of the nursery, really, I won't say there's not one defector, but we have a lot of enthusiasm coming out of the people that work with me every day and have worked with me every day for years. When they wanted to do a vaccine clinic here in Modesto, Vito Chiesa, one of Adam's endorsers, called me up, said, hey, will you guys do a vaccine clinic? Gavin Newsom and Karen Ross want to get more of the Hispanic farm workers vaccinated here for COVID. I said, yeah, what do you need? He goes, well, this, that, we don't have this, we don't have that. I said, whatever, Vito, just the answer is yes to it. And Vito said this, ask him. You know what? That's why I called you guys. Because when I call on the Duartes, they always say yes. And I'm very proud. Now, does my leadership style have the potential to get a little animated? Yeah. When they tried to sell the water from Modesto to San Francisco back in 2010, I led that community alliance against that. It was Democrats, it was Republicans, it was everybody in the community. I worked a lot with Carmen Sabatino, a longtime Democrat, who had all kinds of friends and others. And we got it done and we stopped it. And it took some heat, but we got it done.
All right, I got the next question. And this one will go to John first. Obviously, one of the biggest issues nationally right now in the midterm election is abortion. So what do you think about Lindsey Graham's proposed national abortion ban?
I'm a moderate on abortion. I believe women should have access to abortion the first 3 months. And I will vote against any effort to nationalize abortion law, period.
I think it's a terrible idea. And that's why I'm a co-author of Prop 1 here in California, to put in the Constitution protections for a woman's right to choose and reproductive health care choices. I think you've got to send somebody to Congress who's going to take a stand against, frankly, extremist politicians who want to do things like ban abortion in the cases of incest and rape of 11-year-olds. It's outrageous. Those kind of bills, we need a congressperson who's going to take a tough stand against them.
Thank you. We've talked a little bit about water policy. The Modesto and Turlock irrigation districts recently approved the framework for the voluntary agreements. What do you think about that, Mr. Gray?
I think it's a good step forward. What they've done is sign an MOU with the current administration, which is a sign that we're moving in the right direction. Both sides think they may be able to land an agreement. As many people in this community know, I've long been a proponent of voluntary agreements. The Water Board was trying to take 50% of our water when I got in office 10 years ago. We have fought them off for the past decade, hoping that the administration and the local leaders could come to a voluntary agreement structure. It looks like we're on the cusp of that. I wish them well, and will do anything I can to support landing an agreement that keeps the water here in our community to protect agriculture and to protect the Central Valley.
Very good, Mr. Duarte. Same question, voluntary agreements.
Sure. I think as the law goes, we have the upper hand here in the Modesto and Turlock irrigation districts. Now, none of us have seen, it's a confidential memorandum of understanding. None of us have seen what the MOU is or what's in there. I do believe that this voluntary agreement process is being started while we have 3 Modesto Irrigation Board directors up for election this cycle and several TID board directors up this cycle. So whatever happens needs to happen under the new board when they're fully seated in a very due process oriented way, so that the community can look at the terms of that agreement, make their comments, the board can receive input, and the new boards are seated to see that through. Whatever it is, it might be a good deal, but we don't know that. And I think we can stand our ground and get a very good deal based on the legal frameworks we have now.
Let's stay on water policy for just a bit more. What do you think of the Delta Water Tunnel project, the proposal, Mr. Duarte?
It doesn't do much. It really doesn't. We need to flush a certain amount of water into the Delta to keep the salt back. We need to pump that water back out of the Delta at the right place and time. The Delta Water Tunnel doesn't create any water, and it's going to cost a ton of money. We should be building more dams, raising more dams, and there are a lot of down-to-earth recharge basins, levee improvements, flood control, and storage assets that we can put in a lot of the irrigation districts throughout the state that would have a lot more positive impact for farmers than a very expensive tunnel program in the Delta. We simply need to manage the Delta for humans and rebalance away from fish. The fish in the Delta are dead. For 20, 30 years now, we've been flushing our water out to the ocean. The smelt have not recovered. The salmon have not recovered. And humans in the South Valley are seeing lung disease, pediatric lung disease at levels they've never seen. We've got valley fever, asthma, emphysema. Kids, we're creating a dust bowl in the South Valley with no environmental gains in the Delta. So it's a matter of management and more so than infrastructure. We can talk about that infrastructure. You want to pour some concrete, build a dam, raise a dam, do some real good.
Very good. Same question, Mr. Gray. Delta Water.
I think we've got to solve the Delta legal issues to solve California's water problems. It serves as kind of the linchpin of California water. What I'd like to see us do is move away from these project by project. I hate this project. I support that project, kind of this partisan political approach. We need to be spending billions on our water infrastructure. And that means, raising existing dams, dealing with the Delta either via tunnels or putting in or making permanent the rock walls that keep the salinity back. We need to, beyond that, invest in groundwater recharge, floodplains. We are so far behind. A third of the snowpack is going to be gone by 2050. And if we don't build the storage to capture the water in the wet years, agriculture and the entirety of California is going to be in trouble, and this country is going to be in trouble because we produce 2/3 of the fruits and vegetables that this country eats. So we need a big New Deal-like water vision that involves billions, and no one project is going to be the solution, but rather embracing a comprehensive package, A to Z.
All right, the next question, we'll start with Adam on this one. This one's from our audience, so we pulled them before they submitted some questions, so I'll ask it. How can Congress help ease financial burdens of families, including prices of gas and groceries?
Mm-hmm. Well, for one, I think we need to start looking at agriculture as an issue of national defense, right? And I think the federal government, frankly, ought to step in and see what they can do to stop states from regulating agriculture to death. 800% increases in regulatory costs here in California for agriculture. Farmers are producing twice as much food with the same amount of water we had in 1980. That's not going to make sense long term, and I think the federal government can play a role in dealing with those regulatory issues by circumventing some of the state actions. Second, I think we need a major investment in water storage to back up the cost of water and the long-term prospects in the West. We just did something like $8 billion investment in the western states on water. That's a drop in the bucket for what we really need. On energy costs, we've got to start making investments that aren't discriminatory towards some communities towards others. We've got a state right now that gives tax credits to wealthy Californians to purchase Teslas, while at the same time raising the cost of gas and utilities for people in this district, right? We need to have a renewable energy policy that actually doesn't balance its book on the folks that can least afford to pay the bill. And I think Congress is going to play a role by investing real money in infrastructure, energy infrastructure, certainly investing the key tax credits where they need to be as well.
All right, John, want me to repeat the
Please.
question? Okay. How can Congress help ease financial burdens of families, including prices of gas and groceries?
Really simple. Get water on the farms, drill American oil, develop natural gas to its full potential in every state, In California, the politicians in California have voted through the new Green Deal, the gas tax, cap and trade. Every green energy fantasy that's been voted through in Sacramento has been on the backs of working families throughout this state and particularly in this valley. The working families in this valley are paying 66% more per kilowatt than the national average. I'm going to knock on doors through the valley. I'm knock John Doherty, farmer businessman running for Congress. We'll slow than that. Get water on the farms, drill American oil, get your high cost of living under control. Most of the time in the afternoon, 104, 105 degrees, the screen door is closed and the main door is open. And these families are ventilating their homes in the middle of the summer. I'm drinking electrolytes, I'm wearing shorts, I'm doing this 3-4 hours a day during the campaign here. This is their life. Can't afford to put gas in the tank, dinner on their tables, and cool their homes. It's ridiculous. Career politicians have gotten us here. It is very simple. We need to develop domestic energy as a matter of opportunity and affordability for families in the Central Valley here.
All right, next question, and we'll start with John on this one. Was the 2020 presidential election stolen from Donald Trump?
The 2020 election is final. It's done. We have a president. His name is Joe Biden. We don't like him very much, but he is our president. He will be president for 2 more years, and then we will elect a new president. God help us. Let's get to it as soon as possible. Meanwhile, I want to go back to Washington, D.C. and shut down the Biden-Pelosi agenda and not make any more large, spendthrift, overly regulatory mistakes that fall on the back of working families throughout this district until we get an administration that cares about the working families throughout America. And that we don't have today. What we have today is more green energy nonsense, more subsidies, more tax credits going to wealthy families on the coast for solar panels, and higher energy costs and gas costs and food costs for working families throughout this district. So we have a president. Hopefully we'll go back to Washington with enough new members to tie his hands, and then we'll get to some policy that's good for working families right here in the Valley.
So you agree we had a free and fair election in 2020?
We had a legitimate election. There were some changes I made, but it's done, it's over, and we have a president, and we're moving on to the next election.
Adam, want me to repeat the question?
No, it's an easy question. The answer is no. It doesn't take 90 seconds to explain it. This is exactly the problem, and this is the choice voters have in this election. If you want an elected official who's afraid to take on their own party when their party's wrong, then my opponent's the guy for you. He's going to equivocate about whether or not, was the election stolen? I don't want to tick off these people. No, the election was not stolen. It was a free and fair election. We've got to start taking on the folks in our own parties, just like I've taken on the folks in my party that tried to steal our water in this district. That's the kind of leadership we need in DC, period, the end.
Rebuttal?
Well, Mr. Unequivocated is getting $3 million out of Nancy Pelosi for his campaign. He will hardly go back there and be a moderate or independent. Not one Democrat, not one blue dog or otherwise, voted against the disaster, the inflationary disaster we know is Build Back Better. My opponent is going back to Washington, D.C. to help Nancy Pelosi cover her agenda, and I'm going back to stop Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi until we can get some sensible leadership in this country.
Should we move on?
My record speaks for itself. I've stood up to my own party when I need to. I'm the only one in this race who has.
Next question. This one is for Mr. Gray only. 2 years ago, the Sacramento Bee editorial board wrote the following, quote, "Just as Jewel specializes in addicting kids, Gray specializes in killing legislation unfriendly to big tobacco. The Democrat is so beholden to the tobacco lobby that he should wear a warning label on his back. Quote, this legislator may be harmful to your child's health, close quote. Please explain your relationship with the tobacco lobby."
Well, I don't think I have a relationship with the tobacco lobby. The time I spent chairing Government Organization Committee, which regulates some tobacco law, we passed some of the strongest laws in the country regulating e-cigs. I think the reference has something to do with me insisting that 18-year-olds, if they're going to fight in the military, have a choice to, the right to make a choice as an adult as to what they want to consume as far as tobacco products. But I'll stand on my record. We've passed tough legislation in that area, and I'm proud of it.
This next question is Mr. Duarte only. In our debate before the June primary, why did you say that several leftist activists had been arrested for setting forest fires in the Sierra Nevada mountains?
There had been an adjunct professor from University of Santa Clara that was arrested and followed out there and suspected as being motivated by global warming awareness. I read that in the papers. I shared it. My point there was that, and your question there was, should we fight extremism? And I was saying, yes, we should fight extremism on the left, and we should fight extremism on the right. And it occurs on both sides, and both should be equally prosecuted. Each should get due process equally. And it's bad wherever it comes from, right and left. And if we don't recognize that, and we have riots in the streets, burning down auto parts store with no arrests and no criminality, but when something happens in Washington, D.C., we're surprised by it. When one group occupies the State House in Wisconsin, and it's a nothing ball in the media, but when it leads to an even worse, bigger catastrophe of civil disobedience in Washington, D.C., it's a lack of uniform prosecution for all extreme behavior.
Okay, so next question, this is for Adam only. How would you respond to those who say you are a dino, a Democrat in the North?
I'd say that's another illustration of the problem in this country. People who want extremist politicians, whether it be in the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. I think we need to send people to Washington, D.C. from both parties that are real moderates, they have real track records of working together and get something done for the communities they represent. And I think you ought to be putting your community's needs before any of the political party rhetoric all the time. Now, if that means some people want to use the word dino, or I know there's the word rhino for the Republicans, I think it's silly. I think it's counterproductive. We need to do real work, and real work gets done by working together.
Right, the next question is for John only. Given that your company received $6 million in COVID relief, please explain your thoughts on student loan forgiveness.
Student loan forgiveness was a giant giveaway to an elite class of folks that overstepped all of what I see when I'm walking door to door in this Valley district in these communities. I mean, you've got families out there that can't afford a tank of gas and dinner on the table, and you're giving blanket without any qualification of need or whatsoever, $10,000 in student loan forgiveness. Now, when a government shuts the economy down and then offers employers incentives to keep the paychecks rolling and keep people employed through a pandemic, it's a really good idea to step in and keep your paychecks rolling and support your people during the pandemic. That was paycheck protection money, right? COVID relief, because our economy was being shut down. That got Doherty nursing employees paid on the payroll. It kept our staffing levels up. It kept our inventories up. And now customers are calling, looking to plant orchards, and they've got a nursery to go to. That's what keeping the economy rolling was intended to do for COVID relief. The only thing the student debt cancellation was intended to do was pass out a freebie to a bunch of Democrat voting constituencies to see if they'd turn out in the polls. And it wasn't appropriated by Congress. Remember, PPP went through Congress and was a constitutional law. The student loan forgiveness never went through Congress, never went through appropriations. It was done by executive fiat. And it was, we don't even know if it was $500 billion or $1 trillion that was given out as voting incentives. And that's all it was.
No.
All right, I'll just go ahead then. Is it a good idea? I mean, should we consider flying migrants from the California-Mexico border to New England? Please discuss immigration reform, Mr. Gordon.
When immigration and the border is left in a leadership vacuum as it is now, and we've got fentanyl, we've got crime, we've got people from all over the world coming through the southern border with no accountability at levels we've never seen before, you're going to see different efforts step into that leadership vacuum. These governors are under stress and they can't bring attention to it, so they're looking for a way to solve problems for their constituents in their states where they're being forgotten by leaders in Washington, D.C. We elected Joe Biden with the authorities he needs to work that border. Our communities in the Valley are seeing more drugs, more crime, more gangs come across that border, and those burdens are being borne not in the gated communities and the luxury high-rises. They're being born in the working communities throughout this country. So yeah, some Governors are coming up with, let's call it creative solutions to address the issue. Maybe it is or isn't what I would do, but I certainly don't blame them for trying something different to get that leadership vacuum filled by Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi, who we elected to keep orderly law throughout America.
Same question, Mr. Gray, immigration reform.
Yeah, I think that's absurd. Using people as props to make a political point isn't reaching across the aisle or trying to create some kind of opportunity for immigration reform. What we really need is both parties. You need, on the Democratic side, people to stop acting as if a secure border and a sane immigration system for law-abiding citizens who want to come here and make a better life is somehow at odds. And on the Republican side, you've got Republicans who will privately acknowledge, well, I won't vote for it because there's just too many people in my district who are anti-immigrant and anti any kind of real immigration reform. At the end of the day, it's a question of sitting down, figuring out how to have a secure border. We've got the best military in the world. I know we can do that. And at the same time, dealing with the issue of quotas from different countries and how are we going to have an immigration system that doesn't require someone to take 18 years. And we should know that here in the Valley, a valley built by immigrants from all over the world, right? This is a place where people have come, worked hard, built a business and opportunity. Our agricultural economy thrives on the hard work of immigrants from all over the world. So it's a problem that ought to get fixed, and it's got to be fixed by both parties working together and acknowledging where they're being ridiculous.
Okay, next question. Please name some of your major accomplishments, Mr. Gray.
Well, some of the things I'm most proud of, passing the largest water bond in California history, $2.75 billion. About $1.8 billion of that's been allocated, and we're going to see, starting in 2023 and 2025, 1.7 million acre feet of new water in California. That's not nearly enough. We need 10 times that. The fact that next year, the first class of medical students is going to begin at UC Merced as part of a UC Merced medical program in partnership with UCSF Fresno. When I started, people told me that couldn't get done. I pushed it year after year. We got the $18 million a year funding. This last 24 months, we secured over $200 million to build the medical sciences building at UC Merced, and we've got the MOU with UCSF. That program is off and running, and I'm tremendously proud of it. I'm also tremendously proud of the millions I've brought in for law enforcement. You know, we need safe communities. That's a bipartisan issue, and that's why you see every Republican sheriff in this district endorsing me in Merced County, in Fresno County, in Stanislaus County, is my tough on crime record and my success in bringing money into this district. I'm also proud of the billions in infrastructure. Right here in Modesto, we secured $800 million to extend ACE Rail all the way to Merced through Modesto N Series, $100 million for Campus Parkway to connect UC Merced and the 99. These are specific transportation infrastructure spending projects right here in our district. I'm proud of that.
Thank you. Mr. Duarte, same question. Just some of the things that you're proud of.
Oh, building Duarte Nursery. We started there out of the ashes of prior companies in 1989, making grapevines. We built that into not only a big tree and vine nursery, we built it into a research center. We've revolutionized how trees and vines are grown. We've introduced clonal rootstocks for almonds and pistachios and walnuts that allow orchards to be adapted to lower water use, wetter soils like the Delta where there's too much water sometimes, to higher saltwater use. We've been technical leaders in our field. We have scaled up and industrialized our nursery processes to where we've created jobs for hundreds of people today, thousands of people over the years. We've given careers to people in the valley here, families in the valley have had the stability of working for Duarte Nursery for decades now, of going home and having the dignity. I'm walking these neighborhoods and everybody I run into says, hey, I used to work at the nursery, or my uncle used to work at the nursery. They're smiling. This has been a great asset to the community. It's been a great resource. And it lets me know when I go back and serve you in Congress, how policies affect you, how opportunities created, how tax structures disincentivize and incentivize, and what the real problems of the community are, so the community can be left to its own industry and solve most of its problems in the free market. We don't need big government programs. We need more freedom. And I think Duarte Nursery, in my experience in the district, is an example of that.
All right, I've got two separate questions for you. We'll start with John. Should Donald Trump run for president again? And if you think the answer to that is yes, would you support him?
I'm not going back to Washington DC to play mean girls about this personality or that personality. I'm going to go back to Washington DC to deliver for this Valley communities, for the working families in the Valley, to put them first. I don't have special interests on my back telling me they want tobacco or telling me they want oil or no oil or green energy or more green energy fees. I'm going back as an independent person. I will support whoever the Republican candidate for president is, because we've seen the disasters of Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi's policy. And I will make sure that doesn't happen to the working families in this Valley again. I'm going to support the Republican nominee for president, whoever it is.
So if I were Donald Trump right now, would you give me some advice? Should I run for president again?
If you think that America will be better off with you running for president again, please run for president again. If you think America can do better, if you don't run for president, don't run for president. Whatever you do, just do it for America.
Right. I think, Adam, you know where this is going. Should Joe Biden run for president again? And if so, would you support him?
Well, my answer is probably pretty similar to John's, except I'll take out one word, Republican. And I'll say I'll support the best person for the job, Republican or Democrat, the person who I think is going to work with the broadest section of this country. Whoever's on the ballot in 2024, and there's a lot of speculation about who that will be, I'm going to support the person I think is going to work across the aisle, both parties, get something done for this country. Anybody who's going to be a lot of rhetoric and finger pointing and nonsense won't earn my vote in 2024.
So if I'm Joe Biden right now and I'm asking you for advice, should I run for president again? What would you tell me?
You know, one of the things I tell people in this district all the time is I point out to them that under pure Republican government, like in 2016 when we had Donald Trump, a Republican Congress and a Republican Senate, and under pure Democratic government, which we've had several times during the Obama years, the Bush years, pure Republican government. You know what's not happened during any of those administrations? Water storage. So I guess what I would tell you is whoever actually makes progress on water storage, and if Joe Biden makes progress, they're currently working on the San Luis Reservoir project to raise that. Something that didn't get done during the 4 years of Trump is starting to get done during the Biden administration, but the jury's out. Can they actually deliver something? That'll go a long way in informing my vote on who I support for president in 2024.
All right, so next question, and I'll ask this to both of you, and we'll start with Adam. If you're elected to Congress, who would you support for Speaker if the Democrats retain control?
Well, I'm going to wait till I get there and figure out who the candidates are for Speaker. But I'll tell you this, I'll support the most moderate option, the one I think is most likely to work with both parties.
All right, would you support Pelosi?
Would I support Pelosi if she's the most moderate candidate? Is it her and Donald Trump? She doesn't strike me as a moderate, but, look, there's only one person in this race, I've said this over and over again, who has the record of standing up to my own party. I believe in moderate politics. I believe in bipartisanship. I believe in people working together. That's what I'll be looking for in a Speaker candidate, if and when the voters decide to send me to Washington, D.C. to serve them in Congress.
Has she endorsed you?
Well, I don't know.
All right, John, same question for you. If the Republicans take over the House of Representatives, who would you support for Speaker?
Whoever can get the most done for the district, whoever is most committed to water storage and delivery to humans. There's a lot of water storage projects we talk about that don't deliver to humans. If you look at Sept Reservoir in the Walk 1, it doesn't deliver water to humans until the water districts and the farmers remortgage their land to add to the funds to build that. So we need water for humans. We need reform of how the Delta is controlled. We need a lot of natural resource issues redirected, and I will support whichever Republican candidate for Speaker. And yes, I will tell you, I'll vote for Republican. Come on now. Let's keep it a little real. Can deliver the most for this district and this valley. And that'll be my standard, and I'll hear the arguments when we get there.
So would you support Kevin McCarthy?
If I believe Kevin McCarthy can do the most for this valley and get the most done for the working families in this valley, I'll support him.
Has he endorsed you?
He has endorsed me.
I know that neither of you want to think about this or in this way, but this is a really close election. And if you happen to lose, we've seen before that some candidates will refuse to concede. So John, do you see a scenario where you would refuse to concede if you lose this election?
I'll wait for the final count to get in, and the voters will be the voters. I respect the voters. I'm going there to represent them. And if staying home is how I represent them in their choice, I'll stay home and go back to making grapevines and trees. I'm not a career politician. I'm going forward because I could not watch America go in the direction it's going and not do everything I could to redirect America. I'm going to work as hard as we can in the campaign. We are going to try and deliver this race over to a Republican seat that can stop Nancy Pelosi and stop Joe Biden's agenda, because I believe they're very detrimental to this country. And if the voters choose otherwise, the voters choose otherwise. I've been happy living with my wife, Alexandra, here in California for 26 years, and I can stay happy there. Give me a legitimate vote count, and when it's done, it's done.
Okay, so there's not some kind of strategy that you would follow that maybe you just would refuse to concede?
I intend to live my life out in this district. I'm not going to make a fool of myself.
Okay. Mr. Gray, do you have?
Will I accept the results of the election? Yes. Was that the quiz? That was the question, wasn't it?
Let's talk about climate change. What are your solutions to solving climate change, Mr. Gray?
I think we got to, just like water, kind of take an all of the above approach. We need to invest in renewable energies. In California, we've done a lot of that. Like I said, we need to do it in a fashion that doesn't balance the books on the folks that can least afford it. We need to look at carbon capture. We need to make investments in programs in agriculture that frankly do a lot for carbon capture. I think climate change policy, frankly, ought to be an opportunity to grow California agriculture and American agriculture. We've got to make these infrastructure investments. And the problem that we've got in Congress right now is a lack of willingness to make big projects work, right? Too often, what project you oppose reflects your party registration. Right here in California, you see a lot of conservatives don't like high-speed rail. So that's a bad expenditure of tax dollars. A lot of progressive Democrats don't support the reservoirs that we need in this community and throughout California. We've got to stop having the only thing we agree on being not building stuff and get back to a country that actually does invest in these big infrastructure projects that can help us adapt and solve the climate change crisis.
Thank you. Same question, Mr. Duarte, climate change.
Climate change is being solved, if it's being solved, if it can be solved, here in California on the backs of working families throughout this valley. We have higher temperatures, more outside jobs, more low-income people, working families here in this valley than almost anywhere else in the state. California wants to lead the way in climate change by subsidizing companies, corporations, and well-off folks, solar panels, Teslas, everything else. I will vote against green energy fantasies that come down on the backs of working families. I will also drill American oil now. We need to have natural gas. We need to have American energy independence, and we need to have it now. There's no use passing a $280 billion microprocessor bill if we don't have an electric grid that's powered to support the manufacturing. When we pursue these green energy fantasies at the exclusion of carbon energy, which Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden are doing right now, we not only raise the cost of electricity, the cost of gasoline for working families, we destroy the opportunities for manufacturing to repatriate to the United States. We destroy the opportunities for American industry to expand and manufacture some of these repatriated technologies that we're so ambitiously going after with our tax giveaways. So the green energy, America's done its share for green energy. Until the world catches up, America cannot allow itself to become less competitive pursuing green energy fantasies on the backs of working families.
All right, let's talk about homelessness for a second. State and local governments have spent millions of dollars addressing this issue. What's working? Is it working? And if not, what should be done?
Well, if you want to go to root causes on homelessness, we've emptied the jails. These pro-criminal policies have emptied the jails. These no bail policies have decriminalized all kinds of criminality. You know, many of us unfortunately know people who've had drug addiction problems. And many of us know that a stint in jail for a year is oftentimes the only time they clean up and get off their drugs. What we're doing now is we're putting our communities at risk by not incarcerating criminals, freeing the criminals back onto our streets. So once we get past the criminology failures that have come out of career politicians in Sacramento for decades now, we've got to go to the economic opportunity. We destroyed people's economic opportunity over COVID. We had total insensitivity to small business owners, restaurants, restaurant workers, and we sent them home without income, without work. We broke businesses. We've got Doorfront down. Those are all families under increased economic stress. Now inflation's coming on top of that. These families are under even more stress. Steady jobs, balance in their books, a financially stable home life, the prospect of home ownership, because interest rates used to be low until inflation hit us. All these things make it difficult to raise a stable, happy, healthy family. And as we tear the fabric of our working families apart, we're going to incur more criminality, more mental health issues, and more homelessness. So we've got to correct the big problems, and we've got to treat criminals like criminals.
All right, Adam, you want me to repeat the question?
No, I think I have a good sense. And during my tenure, just in this district alone, we've brought $30 million in from state government to help with homelessness. And we've done projects here in Stanislaus County. Merced County has a new nearly 100-bed shelter. But we absolutely do have to start addressing the root causes of homelessness. And it has to do with drug addiction. It absolutely has to do with not having sane criminal justice policies that through early release, Prop 47, Prop 57, we've taken away the teeth, for example, of drug courts, for courts to actually step in and force people to deal with their addiction issues. That's important policy. We don't have that right now here in California. And we've got to abandon, there was a bill that came through the legislature from one of the LA members, and it was another tax on some kind of a real estate transaction or something to raise another several $1 billion in LA. And I said, for every several $1 billion we give LA, Skid Row gets, 7 blocks longer. Like this isn't working just throwing money at the problem. We got to look at the systems, and that means doing tough work. And it means sitting down with county officials, city officials, law enforcement officials. It means giving our law enforcement officers support so they're not out there being mental health workers, which means funding mental health programs and drug addiction programs. So it's a comprehensive solution. It's tough, and it's not going to fit good into 30-second sound bites in a campaign. So I can guarantee it's not going to be solved in this campaign or any other campaign. It's going to require people working together across party lines and both state, federal, and local with a willingness to take on the systems and restructure things.
You want another one?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm wondering about, like we said earlier, this is a close race. Are you seeking crossover votes? Do you appeal to Republicans somehow, Mr. DeGray?
Well, I've got several dozen elected Republicans endorsing me, so I suppose the answer is yes, I appeal to Republicans. And I also appeal to Democrats. I mean, I've got Senator Feinstein and Senator Padilla endorsing my campaign. Look, I guess the bulk of my work in the legislature and what I hope to do in DC is more around the problem solvers caucus model. I do want to work with both parties and find legitimate moderates, not just people who say they're moderate when they're running for office, but people that actually act with moderation when they get there and have a real willingness to work with those on the other side who want to solve problems. Because I just don't subscribe to the belief that somehow my fellow Americans don't share many of the same values, right? That we don't want safe communities and clean streets and good schools, that we want to have affordability, something John likes to talk about a lot. We've got to do this, and we also want to have clean air and a good environment. So how do we sit down and solve those difficult issues? Well, we do it by working together. And I think my work in this district with many local elected officials, people like Supervisor Darren McDaniel in Merced County, who's a former employee of Jeff Denham, who we all know in this area, is a good Republican, but he's also a good American. And we've worked on a lot of good things to address problems in Merced County. Vito Chiesa here, Kristen Olson, Anthony Canella, Jeff Dirksey. Those are good things. But I've also worked with local Democrats to make progress on issues of importance.
Same question, John. He's after some of your traditional base. Are you after any of his? Do you appeal to any Democrats?
It's a 42% Democrat seat, and it's a 28% Republican seat. This whole campaign, my whole campaign, our whole campaign, is about reaching out to the working families in this community and letting them know there's another way. There is someone who's willing to come to their doors, walk their neighborhoods, see them eye to eye, tell them, let's get water on the farms, let's drill American oil, and let's get your cost of living under control. And you know what none of them have told me yet? That their problems are solved. If you go into the neighborhoods and the working families in this district, nobody's feeling problem solved right now. Everybody's feeling like things are going backwards. The inflation's too high. Since last year, they've lost 1 month's salary just due to inflation. Families are sometimes not even signing their kids up for sports because they're barely getting gas in the tank and food on the table and rent paid. We're not building the houses we need to build. We have nowhere near the low-income housing we need to build. We have to communicate. I have to communicate to many, many, many traditional Democrat voting constituencies that there is a clear-minded farmer, businessman, straight-talking, willing to go to the mat and fight for the working families in this district and tear down all this blather about assembly bill this and this bill that, and this bond that. No, we're going to tell the people what matters to them, why it's important to have a domestic energy strategy that makes sense, why water on the farms can be cheap now if we just manage the delta a different way, and how we can create jobs, opportunity, and affordability in working families, communities throughout this district. So yeah, do I need to take Democrat votes to win this? I absolutely do. Do I have to pretend I'm a Democrat to do it? I absolutely don't.
Well, sure, but he's bragged about, I don't know, half a dozen big Republicans that he has supporting him. Who do you have among the Democrats who are, prominent people that are supporting him?
Well, we'll look at the polls. I always like to look at the polls and their outcomes. And just in November 9th, we'll be looking at the polls and their outcomes, and we'll see how many people I have supporting me, and we'll see how many people Adam has supporting him. I have confidence that our campaign is effective. I think we're on message. I think we're talking to working families about things that are impacting them, the unfairness they're suffering under career politicians and decades of Democratic policies coming out of Sacramento and current Democratic policies coming out of Washington, D.C. And we're going to have a clear argument in the streets, in their neighborhoods, door to door, from now until election day.
What about, I guess it's no secret that there's a lot of angry people out there. And sometimes you hear experts say that, the Democrats are mobilizing because they're really angry at the Supreme Court decisions that have come down recently. But on the other hand, aren't there a lot of Republicans that are really angry about, the price of gas and groceries? So which is a stronger force? Who's gonna take the House?
Well, we're talking about drill American oil, get water on the farms, solve energy affordability, solve food affordability, and create opportunity here in California, here in the Central Valley. Those are the issues we care about. Now, if anybody wants to talk about other issues, Supreme Court decisions, elsewise, let them. We're talking about get water on the farms, drill American oil, get the cost of living under control for working families, and create opportunity. Without a carbon economy, we don't have opportunity. We don't manufacture here. We can't power the plant. We can't expand. We cannot expand the industrial base we have to create opportunity here in California. So I'm perfectly happy for anybody that wants to spend time talking about issues that are not get water on the farms, drill American oil, and get the cost of living under control and the needs of working families right here in this district right now. Boy, I hope they continue on that line, because I'll be talking about, guess what I'll be talking about?
Adam, is there a path for Democrats to retain the House?
I think there's a path for either side to retain the House. Certainly, if you believe the newspaper stories you read around the country and the different districts that are in play, it's not a big concern of mine. What I'm concerned about is this district. And I think we got to have, again, leadership. I would reject your premise in the question where you said, well, Republicans care about this and Democrats care about that. So you're saying that there's no Democrats that care about the cost of living, that think their utility bill is too high or gas is too much? I mean, that's a silly assertion, right? But what we need is leaders willing to go to DC and actually tackle the issue. What I think Republicans and Democrats are upset about is a do-nothing Congress full of people who blame every single problem on the other side. And you've heard that tonight. It's not coming from me. It says every single problem in DC is generated by the Republicans. No, The problems are generated by people not willing to cross the aisle, work together, acknowledge where their positions are weak, and find solutions that do all of the above for the American people.
All right, next question, we'll start with Adam on this one. Who is responsible for the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol?
The folks that did it are responsible, and we have them on video, so it shouldn't be too hard to identify.
Was Donald Trump responsible?
I certainly think those politicians, including Donald Trump, that are out there suggesting things that aren't true and using rhetoric to rile people up contribute, but I think we're all responsible for our own actions. And some Americans chose to attack the United States Capitol on January 6th. They ought to be held accountable for it.
Same question. Who is responsible for the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol?
Well, we finally agree on something. The people who attacked the Capitol are responsible for the attack on the Capitol. Totally agree.
Well, look at that.
Was Trump responsible?
No, he did not tell the people to go attack the Capitol.
He certainly did.
Go ahead, sir.
Okay, no comments.
The people who attacked the Capitol are responsible for attacking the Capitol.
There's a bunch of, well, there's actually fewer propositions on, statewide propositions on this ballot than there have been in a long time. But we just want to ask about one. What do you think about sports betting in California? We'll start with John.
I honestly
That's
have,
propositions 26 and 27.
yeah. And those are state issues. Those are state propositions. I got a lot on my plate right now on much bigger issues than somebody's sports bet. If somebody wants to vote one way or another on the propositions, honestly, I think too many propositions go through in California. We've got a supermajority up at the State House. They can take responsibility for all the policies in California for decades now. There's no him and haw. Republicans haven't been elected office. If it's bad and happening in California, the Democrats own it. Republicans try hard, but we haven't grabbed that steering wheel for quite a while. And so they ought to just do their jobs up there and make the policies that they want to make and take credit for it, and quit hiding behind the proposition process and have a lot less propositions on the ballot. It's something that certainly as citizens we have, as residents, we have access to as a process, but it really just shows a gap in governance up at the Capitol.
Okay, so no position on propositions 26 and 27. Mr. Gray?
You know, I agree that the initiative process has gained more steam in recent years, largely because we can't find agreement on some of these issues in the Capitol. Folks that are more familiar with sports wagering law, the Supreme Court made a ruling that basically kicked it to the states to make those decisions, and state by state, and there's several dozen states who have legalized it, and California's looked at it, and that's an ongoing discussion. It's probably best handled in the halls of Sacramento, finding some type of solution that's good for California. Certainly not an issue, I think, that should be solved on the ballot.
Another state question. What do you think about the California decision not to allow vehicle sales other than electric vehicles by 2035?
I think it's silly to constantly set goals that most of the time the elected officials who are setting the goals aren't even going to be there, because we have term limits here in California, to see them through. And what we ought to be a lot more focused on are what are the near-term steps we can take to make sure that we have additional renewable energy, more electric cars in the marketplace. And you can make an argument that electric cars have been taking off in the marketplace. Companies like Tesla here in California have had success selling consumers on those choices, and those are choices that will be good for energy policy. But we ought to stay focused on how do we kind of year by year. It would make more sense to me, for example, to set a annual goal on renewable energy of X% versus we're going to get 70% by 2045 when I'm not going to be here to follow through on that decision. Let's look at how do we move the needle 5% every year? How do we get more electric vehicles into the marketplace every year with tax credits and other decisions? I think that's the better way to do it. I think the rest of that is, it makes one side really happy and it makes the other side angry, and it's just politics and it's not good public policy.
Electric vehicles, John?
Electric mandates for electric everything is just part of the green energy fantasies that's coming down on the backs of working families in this district. You got the governor, one of Adam's top endorsers, Governor Newsom, that we voted in this district to recall by a little margin, wants you to have an electric furnace, not a gas furnace. He wants you to have electric big rigs. We can't even get our products to the port. The almond growers in this district can't even get their product exported. Everybody's under economic stress because of idiocies in our logistics already, and we're going to ban not only certain diesel-powered trucks that now make California logistics different, but we're going to cut over to all electric big rigs on a certain time frame before the technology is ready. We're going to have electric heaters in our house that won't work when the grid's down, which is coming to a neighborhood near you. Then we're going to have electric cars that may or may not serve our needs economically, all on fixed time frames, irrespective of when the technology and the capital is actually in place to deliver it. This is all part of the whole green energy fantasy that sounds really good to well-off folks over on the coast and really comes down hard on the backs of working families here in this district, and it needs to be called out for what it is. It's purely economic discrimination. Solve the rich people's problems, give them rebates, take working families and just crush them a little bit more because we have some green energy imagined fantasy that we think is a nice thing to talk about as we head off to run for president. It's nuts, and it should be called out for what it is.
Are you BFFs with Gavin Newsom?
I don't think I'm BFFs with Gavin Newsom. John likes to say a lot of things about me, and my supporters. But the bottom line is I'm also not against conservatives and progressives. I hope I earn the vote of some conservatives and some progressives in this campaign. But what I tell you what I'm against is politicians that want to continue to move to the far right and far left, blame all their problems on the other party and not accomplish anything. And that's what we're seeing, just constant rhetoric. And I mean, here tonight, John's a moderate, but he's against Pelosi, he's against Newsom, and he's against Biden. And I'm not sure which Democrats he plans on working with, right? We need folks that can work together. And I'll work with the most progressive member, most conservative member to get something done. What I won't do is say anything to get elected to appeal to those blocks of votes.
That was technically a rebuttal. You got a rebuttal to the rebuttal.
I'll stand with the working families, and I believe the policies I'm strongly in favor of are being communicated clearly, and I'm happy to stand in contrast to what's being offered otherwise.
Yeah, I've been on the question. Let's talk about air quality. We live in one of the most polluted air basins in the nation, if not the world. And the question that I wanted to ask was, how do you rate the work of the San Joaquin Air Pollution Control District, and what would you do differently?
Well, the first thing I do, and it's one of the reasons I was particularly emotional about the water sale in San Francisco, is we're just going to create more growth over in the Bay Area that blows into the valley. A large part of our particulate matter, a large part of our air pollution comes in from the Bay Area that doesn't abide by the same as strict standards as the Air Quality Control Board here in the valley. And so we need to get parity so that everyone that impacts our air basin here in the valley is held to the same account. Now, we've done a lot of tractor exchange programs. The air in the valley is getting better. We're using a lot of tractor exchange, using more modern diesel engines. Those are actually becoming better quality engines on the farm. Let me tell you, the early ones weren't great. The automobiles, the gas-powered automobiles that we villainize so much are becoming very, very clean here in the valley. Those are big steps forward. They're still economic for people to go about their lives and have affordability while we make environmental advances. When we start, going to extreme levels on air quality compliance, we chase the NOx down, we chase all the particulate matter levels down so low, we destroy jobs here in the valley, and we push jobs out to the coast where the air quality standards can be handled differently. And that's discriminatory against the families in the valley. And we should all be held to the same standards. And we should make sure that we have enough latitude to improve over time and still create economic opportunities here in the valley for working families.
Adam, how do you rate the job the air district's doing? And would you do anything differently?
Well, I think we got to continue to do things differently. I'm not going to lay the entire blame of air quality at the doorstep of the board, but we can't both have a reduction in particulate matter, continue to drive every kind of polluting vehicle. We also shouldn't shut down agriculture. The drought plays a role, our lack of investment in water infrastructure. And so we're right back to where we started most of the questions in this debate, which is people not working together and making practical, pragmatic steps in the right direction on water storage, on housing policy, which John brought up. We're 3 million homes behind in this state. And as growth continues in the Bay Area and LA, it pushes more folks into our communities as the only communities they can afford to buy a house, and they become super commuters, 4 hours a day on the road, right? This is the greatest agricultural valley in the world. We have to protect that at all costs, but we also need to make investments. We can't have as many kids as we're seeing today with asthma and the challenges that families are facing. We've got to address it from all angles.
We have not a ton of Ukrainian immigrants, but we have some people who are from Ukraine here. What message would you have to them, and should Congress do more to help in the war effort there?
I think Congress absolutely should do more. You know, if we had been more aggressive in standing up for democracy in Crimea, for example, then we might not be looking at the situation in Ukraine today. And which country is next on the list if Russia decides to continue to expand its influence, right? We have a long tradition in this country of protecting democracy and free and fair elections. And we need to do that not just here at home, but abroad. And whatever it takes in Ukraine to give them the resources, and anybody who's saying something differently isn't acting in American interest here.
The Ukraine war in Congress, John?
We've appropriately resourced them with weapons and weapon systems and all kinds of off-battlefield support that's coming through iPads. I'm reading articles about it. I think we're all taking some interest in it. We've done the right thing finally. Drug our feet too long. But there's going to be challenges like this around the world. And when we can find a partner like Ukraine that is interested in freedom, that has a wonderful leadership they have in President Zelensky and their parliament there, that is willing to stand up and put their own blood on the front line and simply wants us to get them the weapons and the resources to fight, that is a blessing. And that's something we don't always have, but this time we have it. We can do that because we are strong economically. America stood up for World War II because we were strong economically. If we don't have a carbon economy, oil, natural gas, coal, when needed, to stand up and build our economy to be the strongest in the world, we won't be the strongest military in the world. We will not have geopolitical relevance unless we take a rational economic path forward. And that economic path is not only virtuous for working families and people that want to have expanded job opportunities, it's a geopolitical necessity for America to be able to stand up and partner like we did in Ukraine with the overwhelming resources that are giving them what they need to become a long-term partner in freedom with us.
Thank you. What sets you most apart from your opponent?
I'm going there to get something done. I'm walking the walk. I'm clearing my voice. I'm telling you exactly what I intend to go do. I'm telling you how I intend to get it done. We're going to be in the majority for a while, and we're going to set this government up so that when we take back the levers of government, we are going to get the American working families what they need to thrive again. We're not going to have spendthrift giveaways. We're not going to shut the country down. We're going to get energy dependence accomplished again. We're going to get food independence accomplished again. We're going to repatriate industrial capital to America like we saw previously. And American families are going to thrive again. And we're not, if we can find partners back there, great. But our partners, my partners, are the families whose doors I'm knocking on every week, telling them what I'm going to go do and asking them for their support. They're not the fancy folks in Washington, D.C. or Sacramento. They're not the lobbyists. They're not the go along, get along career guys that I fix a little something for them and they give me a little money. I talk smoothly to these guys and they buy my BS one more time. No, I'm going back there to have a very clear voice and find whoever can help me deliver for the families in this district.
What sets you most apart from your opponent, Adam?
It's an easy answer. It's partisanship. I mean, you heard John right now. He's going to get the Republican majority with the help of Kevin McCarthy and others. Then they're going to get rid of Joe Biden, get a Republican president. And then if and then only then will they solve all our problems once we have entire Republican control of the government. We've had it, and our problems haven't been solved. Problems only get solved by working together across party lines when we have divided government. And that's what we most likely will have. And I'll tell you this, whether Kevin McCarthy's speaker or Nancy Pelosi's speaker or anybody else's speaker on either side of the aisle, I will work with them to try to get more water to this district and try to improve the lives of folks that live here in the 13th Congressional. Period. The end. I'm not interested in the partisanship. And frankly, I'm the only candidate in this race. John likes to attack my record and say I've done nothing. I've done a lot in the last 10 years, and I've done it working together with people across the aisle. We've got to do a lot more, and families are hurting in this valley, but they're hurting because there's too many partisan politicians in DC who won't work together, and we shouldn't send another one.
Yeah. All right. We have to take the vote. Okay.
We're only going to go a few more minutes after this, but we do have to take a break for a battery change. I want to thank the audience for mostly being respectful. You've done a really good job, and we really appreciate that. It
Bring one thing up to you. I worked for 30 years for PG&E. Do you understand base power?
Base power?
Base power.
Go ahead and give me a quick.
Okay, base power is where power is available to you to use at any time of day
Yeah.
or night, at any volume that you want. You know what provides base power?
Natural gas.
One.
Oh, spinning reserve.
One, coal, all those, they provide
Yeah.
base power. Air or wind generation doesn't. None of those provide that base power. So what you were saying is great. And I want you to incorporate that base power
Can
into
we
it.
talk after the debate? I need to talk to you. I'm gonna
Oh,
get
I'm sorry.
Thank you. I'm gonna take you.
My corner team.
Please put your hands above the podium.
Above the podium?
Yeah.
Not like this? I've been doing that the whole.
It doesn't matter now.
You're late to the game. Oh, okay. Well, fair enough. So I'm sure I got a few flubs in there somewhere.
Actually, I mean, there's been no mistakes.
Oh wow.
None. He hasn't made any mistakes either. But
He's boring. His boring's a mistake.
think you agree on with each other? Start with Adam.
I think John and I agree on water. You know, when these past 10 years, when we fought the State Water Board to keep them from implementing the Bay Delta Plan and taking half of our water here in the region and crippling our economy, we've done a lot of different things. Killed legislation on the floor of the legislature and organized a coalition of Valley lawmakers from both parties to do that. We've held rallies in Sacramento. When we did the biggest rally Sacramento had seen on water, and we brought up thousands of folks from this community, John was right there, and he'll tell you about it. He rented buses, and folks from the nursery came up, and he was side by side with a lot of the good people in this community protecting agriculture. So that's something I think we absolutely agree on. And I think John and I want to see more water, infrastructure and more water that we can use to feed our farms in this district.
You might agree with that. Do you have anything you want to add to that, John?
I think the opportunities to get water in this district, first of all, I appreciate Adam's recognition that we do both agree that our valley communities need more water for the farms, for the cities, for the jobs, for the working families, for housing. You can't even build housing unless you can prove water availability. So we don't have, if we talk about food shortage and water, we have to talk about housing shortages and water also. One of the reasons they don't build more housing in the Bay Area is they don't have the water to build it with. They can't show the 50-year supply. So of course we agree on water, and I think some of the best tomes on civilization recognize right up front, unless you have water, you don't have a community, you don't have a society. And all of our history proves that. So we're silly as a people not having water. How do we get it done? Well, 10 years in the supermajority in Sacramento, smooth talking and working across the aisle, or just working on one side of the aisle where all the power is, hasn't gotten us water. And I think that's where I'm different. I think I am going to go back
asked
there.
about what you agree on.
Well,
so thank you.
Good enough. We agree on that
All right,
much.
next question, and we'll start with John with this one. What does a common sense gun law look like to you?
It abides by the recent Supreme Court decision, very, very clear that we will have guns available to us as a society. It makes gun restrictions unavailable to 18-year-olds. Certain semi-automatic weapons should be unavailable to 18-year-olds. We've seen enough shootings. We can go that far. We need to look at background checks, and we need to look at mental health a lot more seriously when it comes to guns. Guns don't pull their own triggers. We've got to look at we're going to have access to guns in our society. That's been established. It's been clarified. The Second Amendment case that just came through Clarence Thomas is a done deal. We've got to look at mental health. We've got to look at background checks, and we've got to look at some age limits on certain types of weapons. And then, unfortunately, some sick people will get a hold of weapons and cause mayhem. The other thing we need to do is stop glorifying these sickos in the media. Every time they put their face, their name in the media, it gives them the glory they're looking for. And it's sick, and we've got to stop. There's a freedom of speech. I won't ban it legally, but I think as a society, we need to come down against any reporting on the individuals that perpetrate these horrible crimes against each other, against us.
What does a common sense gun law look like to you?
And the answer is pretty simple. My record on guns is public, and I voted both for and against different gun reform measures in the past decade. But what I always look to is the folks that are entrusted to keep us safe, our sheriffs, our law enforcement. And if the sheriff tells me that this is a bill that's going to make our community safer, then I take a good look at supporting that bill. If it's political rhetoric and political posturing, which you see a lot of in these areas, then I don't. We need to be focused on things that are going to keep our community safe. And I think the people in the best position to give us the best advice on that subject are the folks in law enforcement that keep us safe every day.
This might sound a little similar to my last question, but it is a bit different. Mm-hmm. Say something nice about your opponent.
Well, John's a friendly guy. We've known each other most of the last 10 years I've been in office. And as I said, on water issues, he's always been there to help. And I think his heart's in the right place there.
Say something nice about your opponent, John.
Well, Adam is a respectful and pleasant guy. He's worked hard for the community. I think I'm going to go back there and work harder and take a different tack and deliver different results. But Adam's been a faithful legislator, and he wants to do what he thinks is best, the way he thinks he can deliver it. And I think he's sincere in that.
Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to change things up a little bit. I'm going to give you an opportunity to ask your opponent a question.
Okay, that's a good one. Adam, what can I go look at in the district today that is a result of your 1 decade in elected office or 2 decades in public service? What is manifested here in the community today, and what good is it doing us?
Well, there's a long list of things you can look at. The Volt Institute, for example, here in Modesto, that does job training for key industry folks here in Modesto. I've gotten millions of dollars poured into that program, expand that program, give local kids opportunity. You can go to Merced and see the 100 beds of shelter that are part of solving Merced's homelessness problem. And you can drive down Main Street and see that we don't have folks camping in every park and on every part of our downtown, because we've worked together to try to solve that problem. You know, no problem has a perfect solution, but you continue to make progress on those issues. We could jump in your truck and we can go down to Merced and drive on Campus Parkway, a $100 million project that I secured for this district that's up and running and connecting UC Merced, which is going to drive a lot of economic opportunity for this region and the 99, an important transportation project, not just for that UC connection, but also for the important commercial development, other opportunities are going to be provided around it. And frankly, the list goes on and on. You know, we can go to one of our local schools who are receiving twice as much funding for K through 12 students today as they were 10 years ago. And the discriminatory practices towards rural communities were fixed with the local control funding formula. So I'm proud of my body of work. We certainly haven't solved every problem, to your point, but we've done a lot of good. And I know if I go to DC, I can do a lot more good.
All right. Ask your opponent a question.
John, I'd like to know, you've talked a lot about being a moderate and being willing to work with Democrats, but then we hear things about green energy fantasies and frankly, language that I think incites the other side and perhaps bolsters your base, but certainly doesn't make you friends in the Democratic Party. And if you're going to get something done in this region and in this country, I do truly believe you got to work together. And if you can't work with Biden and you can't work with Pelosi and you can't work with Newsom, I guess who can you work with? And frankly, why are you running against the most moderate, most independent Democrat in the state of California? I've got a record. I've been called a radical centrist. You could be running in the district you live in against a right-wing Republican, and we get a moderate Republican instead of a right-wing Republican. We go there together and fix water together. So I guess I don't understand that choice.
Fair enough. Well, there is no center of energy or power around moderate Democrats in Washington right now. If you look at the Democratic Party in Washington, D.C., it is a socialist-driven party. It passed Build Back Better with the Inflation Reduction Act. These are very, very socialist, expansive government programs that are driving inflation through the roof for working families. So my fealties and loyalties and energies are not going to go to my fellow congressmen, my fellow Democrats on the side of the aisle. They're going to go to the working people throughout America. And I think there's a coalition of working families and businesses and conservative values in America that will stand up and say, no, you've got to start solving our problems. We need government that works for us, not government that's padded around and talks to itself all the time and speaks in terms of bills and initiatives and bonds and go along, get along patronage. It is time for the American working family to stand up and understand that they want leaders that will go to Washington, D.C. and understand how affordable energy, water on the farms, attractive business environment is important to them in their lives, and how they're only going to have the housing, the food, the energy they need to lead a quality life when someone is willing to go up there and speak on their behalf in a clear voice that directs the resources and the opportunities they need to their homes. And so I believe at the end of the day, the people will win, and the direction America is on now will be reversed and can be reversed with a coalition of working families and clear-headed leaders like myself.
We're going to go straight into closing statements. This is your final, your chance to give a final summation to voters in 60 seconds. Adam, you first.
Well, first of all, thank you to the Bee, to the Sunstar for the opportunity tonight, and thank all of you who came here to be with us this evening in the room, and all of you who joined us online. This is an important election, as every election is. And you have a clear choice here tonight with Mr. Doherty and myself. If you want someone who has a record of working with both parties, has a record of delivering real projects for this district, not solving every problem, but making sure that we continue to solve problems each and every year, I think I'm the right candidate for you. You know, I'm the only candidate that lives in this district. You know, I tease John about being in that district. He's going to have to make a choice about who to vote for, and it's not going to be me or him because he doesn't live in this district. We need somebody born and raised here who cares about us, who's willing to take on the political parties, both of them when they need to. I've got a record of doing that, delivering for you, and I'd be honored to have your vote for Congress and to go to DC and do exactly that. Thank you.
Thank you. Closing statement, John.
Yes, I am a farmer and a businessman right here in this district, right here in the Central Valley. I was born here in the Central Valley. Alexander and I have raised our family here in the Central Valley. Sent 4 kids through public schools right here in Modesto in the Central Valley. We've built Duarte Nursery here in the Central Valley. We've created hundreds of jobs, thousands of jobs over the years right here in the Central Valley. If you want somebody who's going to go back to Washington, D.C. and represent this community and then come back to this community, I'm your guy. If you want someone who's been a part of the mess for a decade, you've got another alternative. Been back there 10 years. We've got nothing resolved. No one's problems are getting solved. Inflation is higher. Housing costs too much. Gas is higher. There's less water on the farms than there's ever been, except somehow working across the aisle is better than just going on your own side of the aisle and working with your own party and getting something done that you want to be accountable for. Because I don't see it. And I think we've got to talk directly to the working families in this valley and create the coalition that demands change here and demands change nationwide. And then we can start solving the problems of the people who haven't been getting their problems solved by what's going on in Sacramento for decades and in Washington, D.C. for the last couple of years. It's time for a lot of change. I will be that clear voice and clear-headed, focused businessman, farmer, who will deliver for this valley. And will continue to speak to you on terms you understand so you can make the wise political choices that matter. Let's send a farmer to Congress.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. This concludes our Congressional District 13th Forum. Please be sure to watch modbee.com, fresnobee.com, and mercedsunstar.com for this and other discussions leading up to the November elections. Thank you, candidates and guests, both here and virtually, for joining us this evening. Good night.
Thank you.